Got a motion by Mr. Kinsley recommending Mr. Joe Barron. Looking for a second? Okay, second by Mr. Righeimer. Motion by Mr. Kinsley, second by Mr. Righeimer, approving Joe Barron as our second alternate to the Sawyer County Board of Appeals. Is there any further discussion? Yes, Mr. Schluter.
Thank you. Who is the person or group making these recommendations?
This came from
Andy?
the zoning office.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Buckholz?
No, I believe that's what Mr. Kinsley was asking for motion, right? And that would, okay, it come from the zoning office, sorry.
Okay, excellent. Motion by Mr. Kinsley, second by Mr. Righeimer, approving Joe Barron as our second alternate to the Sawyer County Board of Appeals. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, 8B, Animal Control Humane Officer. Andy, you want to talk about how this gentleman got entered here?
Brandon's actually been on board here for a couple months now. He was hired as an enforcement specialist. He took the duties of the humane officer. Thank you. He was hired here a couple months ago. He is a code enforcement officer. We changed the position a little bit, so it's not just humane officer, animal control. He'll also be doing code enforcement for public health and the zoning office, and he's starting to work in those areas. But the humane officer is an appointment that the county board needs to approve for that specific role.
Great. Mr. Helwig.
I'll make that motion to approve.
Okay, Ms. Hel.
I'll
Ms. Hessel?
second. I'll
Okay.
second that motion.
Motion by Mr. Helwig, second by Ms. Hessel, approving Brandon Blichars as our new Animal Control Humane Officer. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, letter 9. Advisory referendum prohibiting outside funding sources for elections. Now, this is a resolution that came to us without going through committee. So due to policy and procedure, we must have a 2/3 vote, correct, Andy?
Correct.
For discussion and possible action.
Correct.
So, go ahead, Andy.
Clerk, can you verify we have 13 members attending?
That is correct.
So we need 9 affirmative votes or greater to the floor.
Okay. Okay, Madam Clerk, we'll have roll call vote, please, for a 2/3 vote to discuss and take action on this referendum.
Ms. Hessel?
Yes.
Mr. Helwig?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Savitsky?
Yes.
Mr. Schluter?
Yes.
Mr. Betcher?
Yes.
Mr. Schuman?
No.
Mr. Bissonette?
No.
Mr. Maestri?
No.
Mr. Rusk? Oh, he's not here. Mr. Righeimer?
Yes.
Mr. Kinsley?
Yes.
Mr. Buckholz?
No.
Mr. Peters?
No.
Can you confirm that, Madam Clerk, please?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 nays.
So motion fails?
Yes.
Okay. Motion fails. Okay, number 10, zoning committee chair report. Mr. Betcher.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, there's nothing significant to report. We have not had a zoning committee meeting since the last county board meeting. Our next meeting is scheduled for tomorrow at 8:30.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for the zoning committee? If not, we'll move on to number 11, public safety committee chair report. Mr. Buckholz.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I would like.
Can you turn your light on, sir? Thank
I'd
you.
like to have the sheriff address first on, and it's in my comments here for public safety on his active shooter training that they give out.
Okay, Sheriff?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and fellow board supervisors. Tuesday, August 16th, 2 days ago, we had active shooter training in the morning at the high school. It was a collaborative effort with the sheriff's department, the city police department, and we brought in all the other agencies that would typically assist us on mutual aid, which included the state patrol, the DNR, Federal Forest Service, LCOPD, Town of Hayward. We had two different scenarios. One was what would typically be a day scenario if there was an active shooter in the school, if the students were present there, and then we did one if it was an evening event. And we had 20, 30 plus role players. And it was also collaboratively done with the hospital. So they were actually transported to the hospital. The hospital worked with us. So it gave us a good idea of the good, bad, and otherwise. If we had any shortfalls, we had quite a few evaluators there that were assessing the good and the bad and otherwise as well. I think it went pretty well. Overall, we did have a few shortfalls. Still working on some radio issues, but we are moving forward with that. Monday, we have more resources coming in to assist us with the radios. So we're optimistic that that is going to really benefit us. Our new channel Law D did give us good reception as long as we had good coverage in there. Our Wiscom channel is very iffy to not at all in our buildings. So we're optimistic with our Law D channel, which is what we're moving to on the simulcast, that when we get this rectified, we're going to be pretty good. According to even outside agencies or assistants, it is a tuning issue and volume issue. So I'm not a radio guy, so I can't confirm that, but we're optimistic. Outside of that, I think it went pretty well, and we thank Stacy Hessel, who was there on behalf of the county board and school board as well. She got a firsthand look. So.
Very firsthand, like they shot right next to you. It was pretty intense. It was invaluable. You guys did a great job, so thank you for doing that.
We also invited LCO school personnel, winter school personnel, our charter schools and Christian schools, and we are going to move this around in the other schools. The plan is to do winter next year, and we want to do the best we can to be prepared. God willing, hopefully it never happens, but if it does happen, we want to be the best prepared we can be. With that, thank you.
Mr.
Thank you,
Sheriff,
Sheriff.
before.
Oh, Sheriff.
Mr.
Mr. Helwig.
The people that raided you, as far as your downfalls, what department were they from?
There were several emergency managers from other counties,
Other counties?
and there were
School staff.
school staff. We had some, Brad Bates is a certified safety manager in the private sector as well, very knowledgeable. So we had some well-received input from them, from people that are in the know and know what to look for.
Thanks.
So, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Betcher?
Well, yeah, first, I want to say thank you for doing this. I think it's really important. I'm glad you guys took the initiative and did this. And my questions were right along what Mr. Helwig was asking. I just want to know, specifically who the evaluators were and their qualifications. And also, if, you mentioned this guy, Brad Bates, is he like a subject matter expert then on active shooter, tactics, techniques, and procedures?
Not active shooter, but safety measures. And Nate Dunstan was there. He was an evaluator, our emergency manager. Okay. And we did have law enforcement personnel that was there. We had probably 10 plus state troopers. And of course, the big thing is a safety factor for us is to make sure we're using our firearms with simunition. And they're not live rounds, obviously, but we want to make sure, and we had double barriers there to make sure there was no live rounds to create a horrible tragedy there. So that was a big part of the monitoring. And when we didn't operate in emergency mode on the road for obvious reasons, but in the school, we took the extra couple minutes as well to make sure those safety factors were met. We also, during the process, law enforcement was given cards like they would be in Coudray as a responding deputy. So we just had them stage and wait the average time of travel. So it gave us a perspective as more officers and officers from outside would come in and assist to give us a better perspective on how it's laid out in the end.
All right, thank you, Sheriff.
Yeah, very good. Thank you,
Thank
Sheriff.
you, Sheriff.
Okay, Mr. Buckles.
Okay, circuit court report, I'll leave that up to Mr. Alvarado when he gets to his. The clerk of court report, Ms. Kelsey received a letter of resignation from her department staff member, and more in the sheriff's report, Chief Sedera advised that IT is assisting in the communications issue that arose after the storm. Patrol report, Lieutenant Rapinski reviewed the report and advised that the numbers have slightly decreased, but includes one fatality. The continued development of the body cam process have completed moving from local services and are on track in the system and hosted by the state. The jail report, our daily average population is 83 plus, and we are housing 22 inmates in Barron County. The communications is pretty much what the sheriff said there, that the coroner report, Mr. Fremel advised that his deputies are working on training. He is seeing an increase in cancer-related deaths, and review and consider to switch to the medical examiner's position, which Mr. Alvarado has provided an explanation of the process, and no action was taken. Emergency management, written reports were provided. Mr. Dunstan advised that they are on tabletop training on active shooter. The grants that normally apply for switching from the physical year to the calendar year, they received a grant for $28,000 from DHS and applied for another grant through CARES funding. They have hired some staff to fill the vacancies and will begin orientation. 6 positions remain open, and approximately $115,000 in revenue is expected through the new billing system. And then CJCC, I'll leave that up to Mr. Alvarado too. That ends my report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Buckholz. All right, moving on then. Number 12, Public Works Committee Chair Report. Mr. Kinsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maintenance, they're still working on the Oasis building. They have signs up, and there's continuing to be work done down there. They do a good job of keeping this building clean. I'm proud of what they do. Airport, there's constantly work being done out there. They're remodeling the terminal building is almost done, so that's progress. And highway, they're out mowing the side of the roads, but it's pretty slow going because every time they need extra people to flag, they pull them from the mowers. So it's not getting done as fast as we'd like. And we approved the board policy and procedure part for the public works. That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, sir. Has there been any movement, Mr. Kinsley, on the ATV, UTV ordinance draft?
That'll be back in front of Public Works in September.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Or October, maybe.
Anything? October, okay. All right, nothing else then. We'll move on to number 13, Land, Water, Forest Resource Committee Chair Report. Mr. Betcher.
Yes, the committee held its monthly meeting on Wednesday, August 10th. We had 3 closed sessions, but no action was taken. The Trail Alliance is conducting trail maintenance, including new signage, and they will be purchasing more trail counters in the near future. The timber sales have seen a recent dip, but are expected to rebound soon. The committee approved the use of Class 1 electric bikes on our trails for a 1-year trial period, and I can further explain that if there's any questions. Planning to do a 2-foot drought on Nelson Lake starting in September 30th, to stimulate the improved walleye spawning, and the lake will be refilled by mid-April of next year, and this will be repeated every 2 years until 2030. And then that brings us to the 15-year Sawyer County Forest Comprehensive Land Use Plan, which is item 13B. And I'd ask Mr. Greg Peterson to step up and.
Yes, sir. Mr. Peterson.
Okay. You have before you the final draft of the Sawyer County Forest Comprehensive Land Use Plan. The purpose of this plan is to administer the county forest program consistent with our mission statement and the purpose and direction of county forest law as stated in statute 28.11. The plan is the authority for management of county forest lands enrolled under county forest law. This was a long process. We did start this off right before the COVID issue hit. We initially started with an ad hoc committee, but due to the restrictions with the pandemic, we switched gears and we presented chapter by chapter to the Land, Water, and Forestry Committee. And at that point, the committee approved the chapters and we put them out for public comment. Each chapter had a minimum of 30-day comment period, and we left the chapters up through the whole process to the point we're at right now. So attached is the changes made to the plan after the committee reviewed and approved that were a result of the public comments and as a result of the DNR review of the plan. So that's what you have before you today, and a resolution to approve. Be happy to take any questions you might have.
Yes, you, Mr. Buckles?
No, I'm just gonna make a motion to approve, the resolution.
Motion by Mr. Buckles, Mr. Helwig.
I'll second that.
Okay, I got a motion by Mr. Buckles, second by Mr. Helwig to approve the resolution 2022 of our 2021 through 2035 Sawyer County Comprehensive Land Use Plan. I guess I have one question, Greg. Does this include or have you addressed this buffer they wanted along the Berkey Trail or any of this? Or is that?
The buffer language is in here,
Okay.
our existing buffer language. We are gonna discuss some changes to that towards the end of the year. With this plan is we can amend this.
Sure.
You know, we usually do every couple of years, so that's kind of on the table to
Okay.
discuss and look at some of those issues going forward.
And the whole carbon credit doesn't affect our planet anyway?
Not that, no, I don't think so.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Peterson? Yep. If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Greg. Anything else, Mr. Betcher?
No, if there's no questions, then that completes my report.
Okay.
May I ask a question? Where are we at with the carbon credits?
We're waiting on another proposal.
Okay, good. Yes, Ms. Hessel.
On 12B, we skipped courthouse remodeling update. I'm just wondering if that is going to be provided, or was that an accident?
Thank you. We'll have Andy, I'll probably address that, Ms. Hessel, but thank you. Thank you for catching that. Okay, I appreciate your report, Mr. Betcher. Moving on to number 14, Health and Human Services Board Chair Report, Mr. Schlueter.
Thank you. We had our monthly meeting. First order of business was the annual public hearing regarding the proposed budget for Health and Human Services for next year. Unfortunately, nobody showed up. So we went out of session and back to the regular agenda. We received reports from all the department heads. No surprises there. Everything as usual. We received the budget proposal for Health and Human Services. Went through that page by page. The committee voted to approve it and pass it on to our county administrator and finance. And that was the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Schlueter. Any questions for Health and Human Services? All right, thank you, sir. Moving on then to number 15, Finance Committee Chair Report. Mr. Kinsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The treasurer gives us a report telling us where our annual sales report is following along. It seems to be moving along quite nicely. It could help us out by the end of the year with funds more than what we anticipate. We received the first opioid settlement payment of $20,134. We anticipate getting another payment before the end of the year. Our ambulance billing has all been moved over to LifeQuest now, which is the new company we have doing ambulance billing. Courthouse expansion budget, we continue to monitor that because we want to make sure we don't spend any more money than we have to, but the money we do spend is going to be good. Budget update. Our administration is working with all the department heads to put together the budget as it comes forward with us. And elected officials compensation has no movement, but we're still looking to see if we can find anything we can do for our elected officials. And we approved the board policy and procedure manual. That concludes my report.
Okay. Mr. Kinsley, will the Finance Committee at all, or how will you address the carbon credits coming forward, or will we just wait until we see?
We'll be working on the plan if we think we're gonna move forward with it.
Thank you. Anything else for finance? Okay, thank you, Mr. Kinsley. Number 16, Economic Development UW Extension Committee Chair Report. Mr. Duffy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We met on October 8th. No action items to report. We first heard from the University of Wisconsin Extension. They reported on the farmers market. It's doing very well. They're having a great summer. They meet every other Monday at the Lumberjack Bowl. We also learned there's 2 classes on grant writing. The class on Introduction to Grant Writing will be held here in October, and the Advanced Grant Writing will be held in November of this year. And there's room in both classes for those that we can encourage to attend. We also heard that the hazardous waste collection for Sawyer County will be on September 21st at the fairgrounds. We then heard from Hayward Lakes Visitor and Convention Bureau. They reviewed for us the room tax report so far and the total business sales for the county so far. We also heard from Northwest Regional Planning, the loan activities for the county. The libraries of Winter and Hayward both reported their summer programs, and we learned that the Hayward Library received from Northwood Stove and Fireplace a fireplace for their library, which was kind of nice. Then on the motorized trail report, they informed us that they're working on the proposed ATV ordinance for the county. And on the balance of the unmotorized report, the Lumberjack Championship that's run by the Berkey was a huge success. They had 2 sold-out days, and they estimated they had 10,000 visitors for the event. The next event for the Berkey is going to be the Trail Run, which is going to be in September, and part of that trail run will be the U.S. Championship for the half marathon. And lastly, we heard from Andy on the broadband, but I see he's got that on his report, so I'll let him, that topic to him to discuss. And that, Mr. Chairman, concludes our report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Duffy. Anything for economic development? Anyone? All right, if not, we'll move on then to number 17, Petition for Annexation, City of Hayward, discussion and possible action. Madam Clerk, do you wish to speak to this?
This was just a petition presented to us from Municipal Clerk Lisa Poppy. They have annexed a portion of land, and they would like to have the boundaries redrawn so that they do not have to create a new ward without any voters.
Okay. And Andy, do you want to say anything else? What we, was this approved and moved on to us for approval?
Yeah, it was heard at the administration committee and moved to the board for approval. They annexed one parcel, it's a commercial parcel, there's no voters in that parcel. But by moving our district boundaries, it doesn't create a separate ward just for that one little parcel.
Correct. So we're approving this resolution then, correct?
Correct.
Okay, Ms. Hessel.
Could you remind me, there is there is an opportunity for them to be paying the town of Hayward, right? Is there a financial gain for the town of Hayward, or was it just, I saw 5 years? Maybe I read it wrong. I apologize. if
Yeah,
I
we
did.
didn't focus, the annexation was between the town and the city.
Okay,
This is just about us moving a ward line, district line for
got it.
voting.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Duffy?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't-
Oh, Mr. Helwig?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, motion by Mr. Helwig. Mr. Buckholz?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Helwig, second by Mr. Buckholz to approve the resolution changing supervisory district boundaries in Districts 4 and 7, resulting from a City of Hayward annexation. Is there any discussion? Mr. Betcher?
Yeah, I just have a question and make sure that, are we allowed to do this? Because I thought there was only certain times of certain years when we could change district lines, just so we're in
By
compliance.
resolution or ordinance.
Okay.
Has to be done by resolution or ordinance? Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Number 18, County Administrator's Report. Mr. Alvarado.
Just to highlight a few things, working on a number of items with Corporation Council, some of which we'll talk about in a minute. I guess the board policies, the ethics policy, and the muni code, all real close on all three of those. The administration committee went through them and had some suggested changes, so we're getting those updated. And a couple committees still are wrapping up their roles and responsibilities for the board policies. You'll be getting a new copy of those that'll show the edits as well as a clean version, because not only are we using this as an opportunity to change some of the wording as suggested, there'll also be some reformatting of the document itself, so it's getting a little hard to read in the edited format. So we'll get you clean copies that will be easier to understand. Same with the ethics policy. There was a couple things that have come up in the last month that look like potential liability claims to the county. So that's when we refer those to our insurance company, the County Mutual, and then they appoint counsel for us. One is an HR issue that we are close to having done. The other is resolving a procedural item that probably will end up at a committee of the board or at the county board next month. That just came in the last week. And like I said, Muni Code, we pretty much have that all reviewed and ready to go out to the board for review as well, so it can be finalized finally. Courthouse renovation, things continue to go well. They've had some delays with materials. Like the burnish block was a couple weeks delayed, but they've been able to reconfigure their construction schedule and move some things around so as not to slow them down. The update as of yesterday, our contingency fund for the project, like Mr. Kinsley said, we're trying to manage this and not go over budget, so we still have $345,000 in the contingency. That started out at $395 at the start of the project. And usually these projects, a lot of that's going to be come up during the early stages of the project with the earth movement or finding bad soils or product substitutes. So we're sitting all right as of right now. Internally, we're focusing on the courtroom AV and the furniture. Both of those are items that we're responsible for that are outside the contract with Myron. The quotes, the estimates from the original beginning of the project, the quotes we've got have come in higher. So we've gone out and found other vendors, and we have the AV back under budget again, and we're working to do the same with the furniture. So just taking a little more time, but time is of the essence because some of these things have fairly long lead times, especially in the AV area, so we're getting those secured now. Broadband, just a little bit of work communicating with the PSC and LCO. The LCO has a broadband coordinator, and they're looking at some grant funding opportunities coming up. And we're jointly looking at just doing some better mapping to look at where the gaps exist in the county now after we have some of these broadband projects underway or funded by the grant process. No details on the opioid securitization. Like Mr. Kinsley said, we received our first payment. That's been put into a separate account. We should receive another payment before the end of the year. The WCA is hosting an opioid summit on Monday to discuss a little bit on the securitization, but more so they're be putting some ideas out there on ways to use the settlement funds to address the opioid epidemic on a regional or statewide basis. ARPA funds, we're getting those out as best we can. We've got some agreements in place, or getting agreements in place to disperse the funds the board has already approved. because some of those projects are moving ahead. 2023 budget process, like had been mentioned, we're putting it together. We've met with almost all departments. We have one more meeting tomorrow, and then a couple meetings next week with outside organizations. At this point, I don't have a number for you, but at least the good part is net new construction was up 1.17%, so that's $110,000, I think, of additional levy because of that. Sales tax projections are staying good. Stumpage revenue is flat, but is not declining. So on the revenue side, everything is projecting out well. There's a handful of new positions requested, but it's unlikely with that amount of revenue that we're going to see the ability to implement new positions without reducing in another area. But I expect we'll have a draft ready by the end of the month, and then turn it over to the board in September. Otherwise, we've been having department meetings, monthly meetings with them, just going over some, hiring, recruiting items, and getting flexible alternate scheduling as a way to help us recruit and retain employees. Covered First Amendment audits the last couple of months. That's something that's been happening in other counties, and just making sure our staff is prepared. And then doing some employee engagement things like potluck picnics, and we have the online store for Sawyer County gear if you're interested in that. But just some of those small touches to make it an attractive workplace.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Helwig.
Mr. Alvarado, do you have is there gonna be an admin commit or ad hoc committee, or you got some sort of plan on how that opioid money is going to be used?
At this point, it's my understanding that was tasked to the CJCC committee, so they've been discussing it there. But I would say at this point, we need some concrete recommendations from them.
What is the amount we're expecting, Andy, for the opioid money total?
400, well, I believe the total is $430,000 if we take it over the 18 years. If we take it a bigger installment up front, it'll be less, I believe 370,000. So
And that money's not in the budget yet, correct?
no, that's been budgeted.
Okay.
That money all has a document that guides how you can use it. But just to go back to Mr. Helbig's question, when I came in, was what I understood, is that they had been told that they were to come up with recommendations on how to use the opioid settlement funds, but ultimately it would come back to the board for approval. And just maybe to continue the CJCC report from there, in addition to talking about opioid settlement funds, they've also been overseeing the TAD grant that the county received for 2022. So with that, the diversion program is up and running now. And then now we're working on the TAD grant. It's the treatment and alternate diversion program grant from the Department of Justice. We're applying for 2023 to get the drug court up and running the first of the year.
Great. Anything else from Mr. Alvarado? Okay, if not, we'll move on then to correspondence, reports, conferences. Madam Clerk, you wanted to make an announcement on the WCA conference coming up?
Yes, just for the members who originally indicated that you would attend the WCA conference starting September 18th. I've heard from a few of you that you can't make it. If there are others who cannot make that original commitment to attend the conference, please email me or let me know right away so I can cancel reservations.
And then I see, Mr. Alvarado, we have a resolution that you drafted that's been approved to be presented there, correct?
Yeah.
And what is that regarding again, sir?
The resolution we approved was to restructure the CSP program and human services to be more like CCS, where the state would cover more of the cost, essentially.
For out-of-county placements?
Yeah, that would cover out-of-county placements.
Great. And Mr. Kinsley, do you wish to say anything regarding our Sawyer County Fair week just completed?
Fair has been completed. I think overall it went quite well. And they had one rain day, and they always seem to get one rain day on there, but that happens.
Family fun night, they had 1,100 people, they counted with a clicker, just
Wonderful. Yeah. It seemed well attended, what I saw. All right, if there's nothing else, then we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
There's some signatures that need to be